around 1974, a tabletop game by the name of Dungeons & Dragons was created. It's a very polarizing game. Players renowned it for its ability to bring people together and creative use of imagination. Christians saw it as evil due to its magic and wizardry. And the general public saw its players as smelly, basement-dwelling man-children. Man-children who would get together with other man-children and dress in funny hats and carry sticks and pretend that they're wizards and warriors. With today's more cool nerd culture, D&D has seen a resurgence of sorts in the form of shows like Critical Role and Harmon Quest, bringing it to the mainstream. With D&D in the state that it's in now, is there any way that anyone who would look at it as a bunch of nerds in a basement possibly be able to enjoy it? Well, join me on my quest to find that answer, but mostly on a journey of the folly of making a documentary during a pandemic. For years, my friends have asked me to join them in their games of Dungeons & Dragons, and for one reason or another, I just never did. Either be that it felt like it would take too much time, or I wasn't in the right mood for it. I just never quite got around to doing it. It's not that I am not nerdy enough. I am plenty nerdy enough. I just never really quite wanted to sit down and play this game. I had nothing against it, though. So when thinking about a focus for this project, I decided that maybe it was time that I actually give it a shot and play myself and document my whole experience. And after giving that idea a little bit more thought, I realized that it would be way too boring because I'm already very nerdy. So, let's say we take someone who's never played or never would even consider playing and see how they handle it. But before I could really nail this plan down, I needed to get a team. I need to get a game going, players, a dungeon master, a location.
My name is Nicholas Kruger. I am 30 years old, a student at Oakland University, going for secondary education, and I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for about 20 years. Dungeons & Dragons is, it's a game that takes place entirely in your imagination. And so you roll dice, basically you say what you want to do, and then you roll a dice to determine how well your character does that. So there's the Dungeon Master who runs the game, and then the players. So it works best if you have like 3 to 5 or 6 players. But yeah, everything is going on in your heads. And so in that regard, it's really like a video game, except there's no limitations. So like, yeah, there's no graphics, but it's your imagination. So in that regard, like, it's got the best graphics, you know? So I usually Dungeon Master, which means I build the world for the players to inhabit. And so the players are their one character, and then the Dungeon Master is everything else. So I would be, you know, the city streets and the people on that street and the city itself, and then like the continent that the city's on, and like all the inhabitants, all the monsters. The responsibility for the Dungeon Master is really massive. It's a lot of prep work. I think it's like, if you're gonna play like a 3-hour session of Dungeons & Dragons, it's like at least 3 or 4 hours of prep for the Dungeon Master outside of that.
I pretty much knew going in that Nick would be a slam dunk. He's really passionate about Dungeons & Dragons, and I knew he'd pretty much be able to guide any player to being pretty competent at it in just a few minutes. So I had my Dungeon Master. Now, all I needed was 2 or 3 more players to join my non-player in this campaign.
So I made a half-elf paladin. I'm working on his background, obviously, but rolled pretty well, I think.
So I had my brother roll a character. He'd been wanting to play this game for a long time with a group of people, but could never find any, so I figured it was a great opportunity for him too. My brother seemed to know enough to be able to roll his own character. I think he had done a couple in the past on his own. Juan, describe your character to me real quick.
They are a variant human that is a rogue class. So my highest skills are dexterity and charisma, if I remember correctly. 2014, I think that was my next highest.
My friend Juan, on the other hand, did need a little bit of help with that sort of thing. He'd been really into Dungeons & Dragons after watching a lot of Harmon Quest, so he was really excited to play with us. Now I was just down to my last player, the focus of all of this. And fortunately for me, Juan's sister is not too nerdy, and I asked him to ask her if she would play, and she agreed. So everything was fine, we set a date for her to roll her character, and we were pretty much ready to go. Everything seemed to be going pretty perfect. The plan was coming together pretty nicely, too nicely even, because just days before we were supposed to roll Juan's sister's character, I came down with a positive case of COVID-19, and this turned everything on its head. As passionate as I am and as excited as I was for making this documentary, I knew none of that is worth my friend's health. So 3 weeks went by, nothing was able to be captured, and the deadline was getting closer and closer. By the time I finally started feeling better, and I wanted to get everything back into motion, as luck would have it, Juan's sister needed to drop out of the project. So now I was down on time, and I needed to find that person once again. Someone who would be able to look at this project without being super confused and be able to take it seriously in a pinch over the weekend.
My name is Kirsten, and I grew up in Holly. I am a nursing student and a criminal justice student, and I work for the Department of Corrections, and I'm a bartender at Lucky's Steakhouse in Bay City.
Fortunately for me, a longtime family friend, Kirsten, decided to give up her weekend and help us out when we really, really needed it. So when you hear it, what really comes to mind when you hear Dungeons & Dragons?
Fighting wizards, dragons, and dungeons.
With her being part of it, I knew it was going to go well. So, what do you know about Dungeons & Dragons?
Nothing. I thought it was a video game. I think it's a video game. My level of nerdiness is probably a 7 when it comes to like bookwork in school and focus, but in everyday life, probably a 3. Not so much nerd in me.
Anything like any TV shows or anything you nerd about that you love?
I like medical shows, like House and Grey's Anatomy. I'm like the basic nerd for white women.
So despite everything, on the last possible day we can shoot this, everyone comes together, we get the game, we have all the players together, and we're ready to go.
We will start this session with you three standing in the town square. So we're taking place in this very large city called Fool's Gate. It's a capital city in the region.
In the beginning, Kirsten had a real deer in the headlights sort of look on her face. She clearly didn't really know what this was or what was expected of her. That really carried over into the game. She wasn't making too many decisions on her own and kind of just looked around confused most of the time. But as the game went on, maybe she had more wine in her, she really started to come around to it.
When the workers came running upstairs, but...
I just like that you've gone from Swedish straight to French. Nick was really killing it as the DM. He was acting a little bit, and he was having fun with everybody, and they were having fun in the end. It was pretty great.
Interesting. Interesting. Very interesting. Very not what I expected. I will suggest for beginners and new people coming into this, a case of beer and a bottle of wine is really, really good to start with. When there was more, like once we actually got through of like the breaking point of certain rooms and certain roles and obligations to the whole thing, like once I actually got into character, that was my favorite part of understanding like what was going on and not feeling so nervous and weird. Actually using my imagination was my favorite part.
Would you play this again, or?
I would, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, would you play it with anyone, or just with, this group?
Not necessarily with this group, but with a certain set of people that I know and like can trust and be with, not being afraid of being myself, I guess. Ouch. Not with strangers. I wouldn't do it with strangers. I'd be so nervous. No way.
Thank you, Kirsten.
It's not my thing.
Joy.
I'm so
I
sorry.
appreciate it. 2020 has been a hell of a year. People are cooped up. Everyone's looking for ways to make new connections, be social, find new hobbies. Dungeons and Dragons might not be that thing for you, but I don't think there's a better time to look for that thing for you than now. You might find something you're really passionate about in a place you would never expect it. Or you might find some people that you really connect with. I got the chance to see someone come out of their comfort zone and really do something that was so out there for them and really enjoy it. And I really think that everyone's capable of doing that.